It's not every day you get to see a history-making performance, but Scotland 11 points to 6 over England at Twickenham. First time they've won there in 38 years, which is about as long as I've been alive. Not quite. Similar. How old am I? I don't know, man. I got up at 5:30 to watch this game, which started at 5:45 over here in New Zealand. And if you are going to get out of bed at that time, you would hope to watch a game which is tight, goes down to the wire, and you get to see, like I said, history-making performance, and it certainly was that. 11 points to 6. It's a try and 2 penalties to 2 penalties. Overall thoughts, man. England looked off the boil. I know that's that cliche like Scotland wanted it more, but they looked like they wanted it more, man. They were just fired up, and they could have won by more. Their own execution let them down at times, Scotland. It was like they left a small chance for England to win it at the death, but England never really looked like going 50 metres down the other end through that Scottish defence to score a try. It just didn't look like happening. I will go over some of the key events of the game quickly and the stats. You guys can let me know how you thought this one went. I haven't had a look at Italy and France yet because that game was on at a much earlier time than 5:45. So anyway, it starts off and Itoje is making Ali Price's life hell. Like, he gets charged down a couple of times in the first few minutes when he's trying to do box kicks. And if Itoje had a bit of better luck, he may have been able to sneak over for a try at the start of that first half. Not to be, but yeah. That was a bit of good news for England, but the bad news was they were conceding penalties like nobody's business. It must have been the first 4 penalties in a row. Scotland were going maul, penalty, another maul. Eventually they opt for 3 points. And sure enough, it's 3 points to 0. Itoje with another charge down on Ali Price, and he was getting in his head. Anytime Ali Price was getting ready to do a box kick, you could see him kind of trying to fake Maro Itoje out, trying to get him to go early. But yeah, he put in one horrendous box kick, which was only saved by the fact that Scotland were able to get a line-out steal from England's resulting line-out. But yeah, it was a clear example of a guy getting in somebody else's head, old Itoje into Ali Price's head. The first scrum penalty went England's way, but there was still heaps of Scotland pressure on England, and the second scrum penalty went Scotland's way. So it was kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. 23 minutes, England get a yellow card. Now, they're putting heaps of line speed on in terms of their defensive effort, England, but too many penalties. I think that one was a high tackle. Billy V goes off. The ref just basically says you've just conceded too many penalties in too short a time. So you're thinking, man, this is a chance for Scotland. They go through a whole bunch of phases, but Watson gets held up over the line. And maybe a little bit of questionable decision-making here because they opt for a 5-metre scrum, and scrums are horrendously slow anyway. When you've got the yellow card clock ticking down, and it's maybe an argument for the scrum clock to be stopped, the clock to be stopped when there's a scrum, is that when there's a yellow card and you call for a scrum, it's just going to waste so much time. It was amusing to see Johnny May at the back of that scrum. He looked slightly out of place, but maybe he had more to do during that scrum than the whole bloody game itself, to be fair. But yeah, they finally completed the scrum like 2 or 3 minutes after it first was called for. They cross-kicked to Duan van der Merwe, which was a surprising choice with the extra man, given the defence was kind of able to get across. With Johnny May in the scrum, there should be a man over somewhere, but the kick was too big for him, and England kind of got out of jail. They did, however, not long later, get a try through that same man I just mentioned, Duan van der Merwe. And it was a weird one because Owen Farrell knocks on a high ball, and he wasn't the only guy knocking on high balls. There was a few guys struggling under the high ball in this game. But Farrell knocks it on. Scotland go through the hands. I think it's Turner who's the second man out from the wing. I feel like he needs to draw a player. Maybe he has done just enough, but I thought maybe he passed it slightly too early. He passes it to Duhan on the left wing, and he's got way too much to do to score a try. There's no way he's going over for a try. But the guy is a monster of a man. Like Scotland, I was a bit critical of him when he decided to leave Edinburgh after not long getting Scottish residency. But, okay, they're probably worth having him because he somehow manages to barrel through like three guys. Wilson's not able to stop him. Somehow he gets the ball down. They missed the conversion though, but it's 8-0. 5 points during the yellow card. Scotland have been dominant. The stats are all Scotland. And it's looking like it's going to be a long day for England. But somehow it's like getting that 8-point lead makes Scotland switch off a bit because they can see the soft penalty which Farrell kicks to make it 8-3. And that's also during the yellow card. So the yellow card finishes 5-3 in Scotland's favour. So they only win that one by 2 points. And then another offside penalty for Scotland. And it's poor as well because it's a really casual exit from Scotland. I think it's Hogg and Russell. They get the ball. There's an English guy chasing to like close them down. They kind of pass it between each other, but they actually don't get the ball out. They don't kick it long. It's too casual, and that puts them under pressure. They concede a penalty. Farrell's lining it up. The TMO gets on the horn to the ref and says, look, there's been a trip, so it's Finn Russell. He trips up Ben Youngs when England were having that attacking play. So he gets yellow carded. And England go into the break only 2 points behind. Despite only having 29% possession and like 118 run meters to 279. They've had to make 76 tackles to Scotland's 26. Like England have been under the pump, but they're only 2 points behind. England missed like 18 tackles in that first half, which is very uncharacteristic. I think the penalty count was 12-4 in that first half. So despite all that, they're only 2 points behind, and they're going to go into the second half with an extra man. And like it's looking not great for England, but all things considered, it looks like the second half could be a bit rosier. But it's not. Second half, Scotland get underway really quite fired up. There's still 7 minutes left on the yellow card, but you wouldn't have thought they were the team with a man down, man. They were absolutely on fire, putting England under all kinds of pressure defensively. They were just happy to keep the ball. Run that clock down another way. Eventually, Genge gets penalised for a no-arms tackle on Turner, and 11-6 is the scoreline. That's the final scoring play of the entire game. No more points. And this is like, 48 minutes? The Scotland's just done really well to run the yellow card down, and that's the final scoring play of the game. For the rest of the game, like England were quite happy to keep kicking the ball to Scotland, and kicking from hand has been a trademark of Eddie Jones's England side, but too big. Just too big. Farrell especially was a bit off the money. People say the Saracens guys were maybe lacking a bit of match sharpness. That might be true. Like Hogg was just able to get the ball with nobody around him and run it back and cause havoc. Maitland was able to do the same thing. Just the kicks were not their normal level of accuracy. Yeah, quite troublesome. That being said, like Russell was not on fire for Scotland either. He was maybe one of the weaker links in the game. I thought like as good as Hogg was, and Hogg gets man of the match, Russell was just a bit off the mark. Itoje conceded a line-out penalty. Russell takes a shot and pushes it wide. But as bad as that kick was, because it was probably a very kickable one, 2 minutes later, Hogg puts in like an absolute beautiful kick for touch. Like it's not many times when one of your main highlights for the game is a kick for touch, but England kick it long term. He's got miles of space. He runs it from about his own 22, just kicks this pile driver kick to the corner, and it's like 2 bounces into touch. England are suddenly on their own 5 metre line. It was just like magic. The guy had it on an absolute string. England get warned for a yellow card again for too many penalties, but that one never eventuates. Scotland's maul goes close at one point, but it gets turned over for some good England defence. And then on 61, England put in a monster of a scrum and get a penalty. And you're wondering, is this a turning point in the game? England go 12 phases on attack, but their attack is just going nowhere, man. It's just looking lackluster. It's just not clicking. First game of the Six Nations again for England just seems to be a problem. It was the same last year. As much as I will say their attack was lackluster, Scotland's defence was really good. So, again, combination of the two things, not just one or the other. Another 30-meter kick, 50-meter kick, sorry. This one's from Hogg. 50-meter kick. He pushes it wide, similar to Russell's one earlier, but it's a tougher kick in the rain for Hogg to take a penalty shot. It was, again, just leaving that door open wide enough for England maybe to come back, but wasn't to be. 75 minutes, Johnny May gets one of his few runs of the game, and Scotland's defence just like holds him up. I think literally they hold him in the air for a moment, and they get a maul turnover. May knocks it on as well from a free kick from Scotland later. It was just kind of characteristic of England's just being a bit error-ridden today. 79 minutes, Scotland going through phases in England's half. They take a drop goal attempt, but it's a really poor one. And they actually give England one last chance to run it back. England did not look like going 50 metres to score a try, and sure enough, Hamish Watson wins a turnover and puts the thing into touch. First Scottish win over England at Twickenham in 38 years. And yeah, man, if there's a case for not having a crowd giving the away team a bit of an advantage, this game will be an argument for that, but you got to give credit to Scotland. They absolutely looked ferocious. England just looked a bit off the pace, which is unusual for an Eddie Jones team. Possession finishes 63-37. Territory finishes 59-41 in Scotland's favour. Run meters is 540 to 342 in Scotland's favour. Line breaks is 5-zip in Scotland's favour. So Scotland defensively really able to do the job, or you could argue the other way, England's attack just not looking like clicking. Tackles, England 201 attempted, 174 made. That's more missed tackles than England would usually have. Scotland 99 attempted, 91 made, so defensively pretty strong. Turnovers 1-2 to 4 in Scotland's favour. Despite having 63% of the ball, they still managed double the turnovers of England. Also, line-out steals, Scotland managed 2, whereas their own line-out was at 100%. As I mentioned, Hogg gets man of the match. 8 defenders beaten for him and 69 run meters. Hill for England makes 24 out of 25 tackles, and he's the one who manages to stop that Scottish maul, which goes pretty close in the second half. So good showing from him. I was a little bit critical of him, saying he's no Launchbury in the build-up, but he put in a decent shift, at least defensively. Johnny Gray makes 12 from 12 tackles. He is always a defensive stalwart for Scotland. But man, what can you say? Big result. Big result for Scotland. Not sure where this leaves the Six Nations. It's still very early days, but man, that's a big result. Duan van der Merwe, great try. You guys should watch the match if you haven't done it. It'll be on, I think it's ITV, this one. Let me know your thoughts on the game. Where does this leave Scotland in the Six Nations? Is this just a one-off, their kind of one big game of the Six Nations, or can they push on? For England, they'll require other teams to drop games, but I guess they've got France at home, so if France is the other main contender, I don't know, we're forgetting about Wales and Ireland. Don't know, my brain's a bit frazzled. Big result. If you haven't seen the game, watch it, because it's worth a watch. Crazy. You can watch it on ITV, like I mentioned, on demand. So yeah, do that if you're in the UK. Otherwise, just use a VPN. It's worth a watch. Very intense battle. Anyway, I've been going on for 13 minutes. I better go. I need to watch Italy and France. I'm sure that'll be just as close as this one, and edge of your seat tension. You guys take care. Talk to you again soon. See you later.